Welcome, Age of Vintage Society. Although she never became an A-list star and only made a handful of films in Hollywood, Capucine achieved screen immortality as the wife of Peter Sellers' Inspector Clouseau in The Pink Panther, the first film in the popular series. She appeared in 36 films and 17 television productions between 1948 and 1990. Why was Capucine's talent so controversial? Make sure to watch the video until the end and leave your thoughts in the comments. If you are new here, join our wonderful community by subscribing to the Age of Vintage channel. Germaine Hélène Irène Lefebvre was born in Saint-Raphael, Var, France on January 6, 1928. She took the stage name Capucine during her modelling days. The name, pronounced Capucine, is French for the nasturtium flower. But she has a nickname. To close friends, she was Cap. She spent her childhood in Toulon. Her parents moved, and she moved to Saumur, where she studied. She attended school in France and received a BA in foreign languages. After the war in Europe ended, she was pressured by her family to get a job as a teacher. When she balked at that, they suggested she work in a bank. A tall, strikingly beautiful woman with grey-blue eyes. Director George Cukor once said, "The camera has a love affair with her face." She was discovered by a photographer while riding in an open carriage in Paris when she was 17. Capucine began as a cabin model by Germain Lecomte, a fashion house on Matignon Avenue. At the same time she posed for numerous commercials, then moved quickly to Maggie Roof. In 1952, having a physique corresponding to the standards of the time, she became a model for Givenchy. She will become a friend of Hubert de Givenchy, who will dress her during all her life. The month of her death in 1990, she will also pose for Vogue Italia in Givenchy. It is also at this time that she dates her friendship with Audrey Hepburn, who is also making her debut in modelling, and the two were roommates for a time. Their friendship would last for the rest of Capucine's life. She alternates her activities at Givenchy with representation dressed in Dior, Fath or Balmain on behalf of the Chambre Syndicale de Haute Couture. Her first cover of French Vogue is photographed by Henry Clark. She works with Jean Chevalier de L. French as well as the prolific photographer Georges Dambière. She is also photographed by Capa in 1951. Around this time she changed her name to a single word. She later told a reporter, "I hated Germaine and changed it when I became a model. Somehow the name just stuck, and here I am." In 1952 she got a 2-week job modelling clothes in fashion shows aboard a French cruise ship. She shared a cabin with a 17-year-old dancer working in the chorus of the ship's nightclub, Brigitte Bardot. Capucine begins at the cinema in 1948 in Jean Cocteau's L'Aigle à deux têtes. Modelling led to film offers, and Capucine made her cinema debut in the 1949 film Rendez-vous de Juliette, where she met actor Pierre Trabaud. The two were later married in 1950, but the marriage only lasted a year. Capucine would never remarry, although she would be linked with several famous men, including the film producer Charles K. Feldman. With classic patrician features and an independent nonconformist personality, Capucine began her film debut in 1949 at the age of 21. One day in the 1950s, Capucine decided she was bored and hopped on a transatlantic plane on the spur of the moment. "My modelling jobs took me around the world and gave me a great urge to travel, so I came to New York." Once there, she immediately got modelling work and met Feldman. The two began an affair, and Feldman took her to Hollywood to study acting under Russian actor-producer Gregory Ratov, and to improve her English. After studying for 2 years, Capucine was signed by Columbia, beating out 100 other contenders for the co-starring role opposite Dirk Bogarde in Song Without End. She received the news from producer William Goertz on April Fool's Day. "All I could say was, 'Ha ha, what a lousy April Fool's joke.'" Goertz had chosen Capucine for her looks, later describing his discovery as being a natural. "You can teach a girl to act, but nobody can teach her how to look like a princess. You've got to start with a girl who looks like a princess, now that Grace Kelly no longer is with us." The acting lessons with Ratov paid off. Although Capucine found acting in a foreign language a challenge, she became more confident during shooting. I was very cold in the beginning, but I warmed up as the picture progressed. That's the way we shot it. I was more than a little tense. I got much better as we went on. For her Hollywood debut, Capucine received a Golden Globe nomination as Franz Liszt's lover, the Russian princess Caroline Wittgenstein. She was next cast as a prostitute who falls in love with John Wayne in North to Alaska, but it was not a pleasant experience. Her lover, agent-producer Charles Feldman, had given Capucine the role in his attempt to make her a big star, but Richard Fleischer, who had been Feldman and Wayne's first choice for director, thought her miscast. Her English, like her experience, was minimal. Although she was beautiful, there was no spark of personality to back it up. I wondered how this bland, rather shy beauty was going to portray a spirited prostitute in an Alaskan whorehouse opposite John Wayne. Stuart Granger, who co-starred in the film, agreed with Fleischer's assessment. I hate to badmouth a lady, Capucine was not very good. Let's just leave it at that. To be fair, Capucine was unhappy with the part, saying, "I knew my role was window dressing. It was not a splendid role." She was also unhappy about working with John Wayne and complained about his ego. It was a John Wayne picture. He knew it, and he expected everyone else to know it. She was also surprised that he wore a toupee and lifts in his shoes to make him taller than his already impressive 6'4". Despite the unpleasant experience, North to Alaska was a box office hit. Her next Hollywood film, The Lion, co-starred Capucine with William Holden, who immediately fell in love with her. She was considered one of the great beauties of Europe. Holden went on to other affairs, his alcoholism ruining each in turn. In the same year Sabrina was released. He embarked upon a short but torrid affair with his co-star in The Bridges at Toko Rai, the stunning man-eater Grace Kelly. He and Shelley Winters had an interesting arrangement. Once a year they would meet at a hotel for a night of passion, then go their own way. The French beauty Capucine was with him in the 60s for a couple of years. Even Jackie Kennedy warmed his bed for a while. Holden called her the most beautiful woman in the world, and the two began a long affair. Holden was still married to actress Brenda Marshall and a good friend of Charlie Feldman. The affair made him feel tremendous guilt, which affected his health. After Capucine appeared as a prostitute, pursued by both Barbara Stanwyck and Lawrence Harvey in Walk on the Wild Side, she moved to Switzerland, where Holden would follow her. She was given a chance to display her comic know-how. In The Pink Panther, she plays Inspector Clouseau's wife, who can afford her conspicuous head-to-toe Yves Saint Laurent because she's nicking jewels behind his back. On a police inspector's salary, how many women could save enough out of the housekeeping to buy a mink coat? Asked the besotted Clouseau. Well, it's not easy, she replies. The Pink Panther was intended to be the first of a film series for David Niven, with the British actor playing Sir Charles Lytton, a gentleman jewel thief. However, it was Peter Sellers, as the bumbling French detective Jacques Clouseau, who stole the film and the series from Niven. The Pink Panther was directed by Blake Edwards and shot in Europe, with Sellers, Niven, Robert Wagner and Ava Gardner in the original cast, but when Gardner made too many demands for perks like her own chauffeur, make-up man and private villa during filming, she was replaced. Janet Leigh was offered the role, but she had just remarried and wasn't immediately available for work. Instead, Capucine, who was now living full-time in Switzerland, played the beautiful Madame Clouseau. Another film with Holden, The Seventh Dawn, followed, and the couple broke up afterwards, although they remained good friends. When Holden died in 1981, he left Capucine $50,000 in his will. Capucine remained in Europe, where she made films of varying quality, including a re-teaming with Peter Sellers in What's New Pussycat, playing a character named Miss Lefebvre, her real name. Her last film of note in the 60s was Fellini's satire icon. After that, Capucine made few American films, concentrating on European productions throughout the 70s. Pink Panther co-star Robert Wagner was able to get her a guest star appearance on his television show Heart to Heart, which co-starred Stephanie Powers. Powers had also been involved in a long romantic relationship with William Holden. Instead of being jealous of each other, Powers and Capucine became friends. Powers wrote in her autobiography, "Cappy and I had loved the same man at very different times and under very different circumstances, but it never got in the way of our enjoying each other as friends." The same year that Capucine worked with Wagner, she also returned to the Pink Panther franchise with 2 films, Trail of the Pink Panther, in which she returned to her role of the former Mrs. Clouseau, now married to David Niven's character, Sir Charles Lytton, and Curse of the Pink Panther with Robert Wagner. Following this, she appeared on Murder, She Wrote and a few TV miniseries before returning to Europe. There have been some very famous mononymous persons, but of all of them, Capucine must have been the most beautiful. Blake Edwards, who directed her in The Pink Panther, called her part Mona Lisa, that smile. Christiane Dior, for whom she had modelled in Paris, was struck by her old eyes. Her eyes were impervious. Capucine is not thought a great actress. Her co-star Lawrence Harvey went so far as to call her ghastly, but she had a flair for physical comedy that was overlooked. Watch her in The Pink Panther strip off in the lift as her pursuers run up the stairs, so that she emerges, ding, in total disguise, then grins with relief when she realises she's fooled them. Capucine is good at switching from dignified to undignified and back again. The trouble is, she was very rarely required to. Her point, as Hollywood saw it, was to fill the Grace Kelly slot after Kelly became actual royalty. This led to some frustrations. The press nicknamed her the Haughty Heron. In 1968, Capucine told an Italian magazine she wished she didn't always have to be elegant, that she longed to play a dishevelled woman, but since the directors know I was a model, it is obvious that they can't see me as anything else. In 1965, she told Time magazine, "Sometimes I feel I would like to cut loose and start throwing pies." For someone intended to fill Grace Kelly's Cinderella slippers, Capucine's own life turned out to be very uncharmed. Beauty was her great strength, but it was also a limiting factor. "Men look at me like I'm a suspicious-looking trunk, and they're customs agents," she once said. As she aged, she felt unable to present the facade required and stopped going out. The parts for countesses and princesses dried up. Capucine was also a suicidal depressive. Hepburn saved her life when she took an overdose of pills. Capucine had long suffered from manic depression and, over the years, had made several attempts at suicide. By 1990, her career had been reduced to sporadic work, and she was living alone in her penthouse apartment in Lausanne, Switzerland. On March 17, 1990, Capucine, who was described by the police as ill and depressed, leapt to her death from her 8-storey home. Her only known survivors were her 3 cats. Ironically, it would be Audrey Hepburn, another of William Holden's ex-lovers and a good friend of Capucine, who telephoned Stephanie Powers to tell her of Capucine's death. She left 100,000 apiece to UNICEF and the Red Cross in honour of Hepburn. Her ashes were scattered by Givenchy. Powers later wrote, "Cappy harboured hidden emotional demons. She fought the best she could until, in the end, she was overwhelmed by a feeling of life's futility." These days, if you remember Capucine at all, it is probably from those Pink Panther films. When Capucine died, little was known of her for sure. Her obituaries couldn't even agree on the number of cats she left behind. Partly this was a symptom of her having been looked at all her life, rather than listened to. Partly it was to do with her habit of gently fictionalizing her life as she went along. Arch in interviews, which she found dull, she invented new dates of birth. Partly because she rarely bothered to correct misinformation printed about her. If you liked this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up, subscribe if you are new here, and if you want to support my work, please visit my Patreon page. Now it is your turn. What do you think about the life and legacy of Capucine? Even the most beautiful ones also had their demons. Do not let yourself be mistaken by just a look.